Okay, so welcome everybody. Today I'm going to be doing a webinar on the MAutoFloorCeiling indicator and how it defines market structure and the strategies that we can use to determine the likely direction price will move in. So the people that have been using this indicator know that it draws basically support and resistance lines known as floors and ceilings. I'll go over that briefly because I've made other videos about it, but really want to focus on the market structure that is defined by MAutoFloorCeiling. So let's just jump right into it. And here I've loaded the S&P E-mini S&P for last week on the TradingView platform. You can also load this on NinjaTrader, Sierra Chart, TradeStation, or MetaTrader 4. This indicator is on all those platforms, and I'm using all the default settings. So there's nothing really to configure. You would just load the indicator using the default settings. So I'm going to be starting from Tuesday of last week. Some people will ask, well, why not Monday? Well, that's because TradingView has a drawback limitation, so these lines aren't drawn on Monday, but you can get around that using the replay function. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm just starting with Tuesday, and there's more than enough examples between Tuesday and Friday of last week. So for those that are new, or just a quick recap, the green lines are ceiling lines and the red lines are floor lines. So when price is moving up, accompanied with sufficient volume, you get these green ceiling lines. And likewise, when price is moving down, also with increasing volume, you get the red floor lines. And in general, they act as support resistance, but also we can see market structure in these lines. So if we're starting with Tuesday, we're going to look, the pre-market, before the market opens, we get a set of these ceiling lines, and then we get a floor line, then we get ceiling lines. And as you can see here, they're compressed, so they become more narrow, also known in Wyckofian concepts, shortening of the thrust. So we can clearly see that here. Right here, that we have a basically compression. We have a compression of the ceiling lines, ceiling lines, plus we are getting a shortening of the thrust. Shortening of the thrust. In shorthand, SOT. Okay. So we see that all happening, and what I'd like to point out here is that I'm going to be looking for the obvious, right? I'm not going to be, trying to cherry pick nuances or tiny details that are hard to notice. Our goal here is to be able to define the market structure and look at things that are obvious. So the market's open around here, 9:30. We get a compression of the ceiling lines. That means we're struggling, to make higher highs. And, the distance between the lines are more narrow than these. At the same time, we can see, so if we look, we get in a floor line here, the analysis we see that there's an expansion of selling in the MBOX histogram. And in the cumulative delta. So this is actually a very good sign. So we see that price is struggling to go up because of the compression of the ceiling lines. We get a floor line, so price has reversed, right? So when price moves lower, we're to expect floor lines, and we're getting accompanied with selling, right? And we see here in the pace, also activity here, and we're seeing that the bids are in control. They got in control here, right? And so now we've got this line here. Price moves a little horizontally. We see a control of the offers right here, but there's no buying to accompany it. So it's a, if we look at this dot here, this would be an effort result situation, effort no result situation, because there is no buying. All right, so as we can see already, the points of confluence are already starting to add up, right? We have a change in behavior here as defined by the compression of these lines, effort no result, no buying, and we see that selling comes in here, and price begins to fall, right? So if you were to analyze this, you can enter as when price begins to break away here, we get another bid control dot right here, and that's as good of an entry as any. So as price starts to come down here, what's interesting is that we did not get a floor line here, right? So this is very important in the structure. No floor line here. Okay, and we only get a floor line a bit later right here. So what does that mean? So what it means is there's a lack of interest, right? So not only does price has to fall for another floor line to form, but there also needs to be sufficient volume. Otherwise, it's not going to form. So there was a lack of interest here. And as we can see, consequently, there's also a lack of selling. And we make a, two floors here really narrow, right? So, this can be seen as a bullish sort of gesture because we didn't get any interest here. Price popped up, we make a floor here, and it's kind of like a ramp. It's not technically a spring in Wyckoff concepts, but it price kind of springs up from here. As we can also see the M cumulative delta right at these double floors that are super narrow. Almost no selling, just lack of it. And we can see that in the MBOX histogram as well is a lack of selling, right? Lack of selling. All right. So, if you were to observe this, we didn't, price begins to reverse up. We did not make a floor at the bottom here. You begin to see selling dry. You could very well, that's enough to take a long position here. And then if you, miss that chance at this very narrow double floor, we see that there's a lack of selling in the MBOX histogram, Q&O delta. That's another position for a long. And so I'd like to make sure that this point is taken. When you see two lines very narrow formation, it becomes stronger. So this becomes a stronger level of support, right? And as price goes up here, so we get some ceilings, and look at these two ceiling lines also very narrowly compressed together. And what happens? Price reverses, we enter this range. So it showed that the market structure, that there was just lack of interest here. And as you can see in the MBOX histogram and the Q&O delta, it kind of goes flat, right? So at this point right here, I wouldn't necessarily take the trade. I wouldn't necessarily take it just because, there's a lack of buying or selling, so there needs to be, buying and selling to push the market. And we see this compression of these two lines, which means there's lack of volume and lack of interest at this level. So for Tuesday, I think that's it, because it just goes flat until the afternoon, I guess. Afternoon, it picks up here. We get a surge of buying here, and price begins to reverse out. So this is also another bullish sort of behavior that can be observed with these lines. And let me point this one out because this is actually important right here. So price blasts out of here, and we didn't get any ceiling lines from the bottom line and the top line. What does that mean? Doesn't mean that there's a lack of interest there. It just means that it's like prices just flying up because there's nothing holding it down. And so as price blasts through all these floor lines, and we see this bar goes up here, now we're in anticipation that some ceiling line is going to come at some point, which it does here, right? So this is kind of like a reversal here. We blasted up through all the floor lines. Now we're above it. We see that, buying is coming in here. We got the X pace, we got the, the control, right? The total control offers, and we go up here. And then we're hitting kind of towards the end of the day, so, I don't like to cut it too close, so I probably would not be, trading around this time. This is 3 p.m. Even though this is a decent setup, I probably wouldn't be on the computer screen, but it's a tradable setup right here. Let's move on to the next day. So I think we've covered Tuesday pretty good. So here we go, Wednesday, and we had this collapse here, 8:30 pre-market. Probably some news. So, we probably would not be in on this move. But again, let's get into it. So price went down. We did not make a floor here. So, there's no floor here. So what does that mean? So we went over this the previous day. So no floor on lower low, there's a lack of volume here and interest at this level to keep pushing price down. We also see that the selling begins to dry. We see in the M cumulative delta, right? This in the X space looks climactic, right? Climactic. All right, and by the time we get here, again, remember I talked about these very narrow lines, when they squeeze together, right? It's, we didn't get a floor here, we got floors here, and it didn't manage to break this low. So this is seen as very strong support. The lines are narrowed together, and we got a lack of, a lack of selling here. We don't see huge buying either, but we see a lack of selling, right? So, it is possible to consider a position here for the time being, thinking perhaps the, buying and demand will come in, but it doesn't, right? So if we were to have taken a long position here, by the time we get to here, we got a double ceiling here, narrowed together. It's not a good sign for a nice move, And we don't see, yes, we see a crossover to buying here. We don't see much buying here. Here we make a higher floor. So this is, I would say, more important here, the higher floor compared to this. We made a higher floor. So we're starting to see some trend form. The only thing, the only sad thing about it is that, we didn't really get much buying here. We don't see much in the histogram. And as a result, we see that price just kind of crawls up, right? So this is a potential, it's not a strong trade here just because it's not accompanied with buying. I probably would not have taken this trade. And as we can see, that price sort of goes horizontal after that. Nothing really interesting going on. But as we can see that the lines are showing us this, right? The squeeze here caused price go up. The squeeze here caused price to go horizontal, the higher floor suggests that, we're in some kind of uptrend, even though it's not that strong, and price kind of inches up slowly, And so now scrolling a little bit along, we see that this situation here, we've got these ceilings, and then we don't get a ceiling line on top. So we had this in the previous day. No ceiling on top. So lack of interest. So we're starting to see this thing repeat, that where floor or ceiling fails to form, usually it looks like reversals, right? So here there was no floor, and it was a reversal, and price, it kind of went horizontal, but it went up. Here also no ceiling, and price, reverses down. So we are defining market structure in this way, and actually we have a good correlation where reversals are likely to happen. Okay. So we come down here. I cannot say that it's, super strong selling. It's kind of horizontal in the MBOX histogram. So, if you got in, maybe you can bang out, a scalp or 10 or so points or whatever. And price inches down. And as we can see, for lower ceiling, lower floor, right? So we're seeing that the floor and ceiling lines are defining a trend here. And here we're getting two ceiling lines, lack of interest, it's not accompanied with buying, right? So it's not a sign of strength. And price comes down, got a floor line here, selling. So anyway, this is all this kind of zigzagging here. So, like I said, I want to look at the obvious. And so the obvious of Wednesday would be we hit here, we get dried up selling, we have a lack of interest, no new floor. If you were to consider a trade, it'd be, after this point, perhaps after you see these narrow floor lines here, and then you get a higher floor, Plus the no ceiling on top here, lack of interest. The rest here is just kind of, I would not be considering probably trading it. Because it's just not as obvious, right? We want to simplify things. So let's move on to the next day. Thursday. Right, so Thursday we're seeing that, we've got some movement way before the market open. All right, we got some news here at 8:30, market jumps up. So here, we've got another good example of market structure being defined by the floor and ceiling lines. Here we make a ceiling, a higher ceiling, and there's a good distance between them. So that suggests it's a strong thrust. However, we find a divergence here, right? So the general buying just drops. It drops. After this ceiling forms, the buying drops. And we get our first total bid control dot here since this up move, which is significant. It shows us that the tables are turning, right? So here we got total bid control. We get a ceiling line here, and we get a nice sort of transition here. Right, we get the expansion of selling, and we get the crossover. We get a crossover. So, price touches up against the ceiling, this floor again, and then it gets rejected. We get another total bid control here, and that's a decent entry because we saw that the selling had come in. And, price comes down a little bit. It's not a huge move, but it's a move nonetheless, and you can bang out, let's see, 5202. You could bang out at least 10 points here, and you'll see that, selling dries up, and if you're not out, if you're not out by that point, you would have gotten out. Again, we saw this here, that, and this happens all the time. Lower low, no floor. Again, it's like clockwork. And guess what happens? We have a reversal. We have a reversal and price, goes up. So we have defined market structure once again. Here we have a higher floor. At the higher floor, we see that there is just no selling in the cumulative delta. Also, selling is weaker than the buying in the histogram, but it's more obvious in the cumulative delta. And so this is a higher floor. So again, this suggests a formation of a trend. Because the last floor was here, so this is I guess we had some floors here. Relation to these floors, this is a higher floor. That's what's obvious, right? We're looking at what's easy to see. And then so we're getting total offer control dots here, and price begins to edge up. We're getting another higher floor here. And as you can see, the MAutoFloorCeiling has defined the trend here and where the reversal point was. So at that point, it's just a matter of timing your entries, and there's many ways you can do that based off of the control dots, based off of the floor and ceiling lines, based off of turning on the algos, just a lot of opportunity. And here we enter a sufficient uptrend here going into the afternoon. And again, what do we see? See a compression of these lines here, which suggests that, the move could be over. And it does, right? It begins to go sort of more horizontal and a little bit down. So you can see the thrust at this point. By the time we get to the top, we have shortening of the thrust, and it's really obvious. Wanted to shortening of the thrust, and it's really obvious. All right, let's go to Friday. So Friday pre-market, price begins to go down. I'm going to look closer to the open. 8:30, we got this series of, and we had a good, thrust here. First thing to pinpoint is that we've got lower ceiling right here. Got the lower ceiling, which suggests brownie points, anybody? Lower ceiling suggests downtrend. Yep. Because we're making a lower lows here, and this is a lower high. And, again, we did not find a ceiling, on this candle. So this, remember, I keep talking about it, this is repeats like clockwork. If we did not find the ceiling at, the high point here, it suggests a reversal, right? So it's just happening over and over and over again. It's almost like magic. No new ceiling. So there's a lack of interest. All right, and also if we're looking at the order flow, so we see we had, quite a bit of buying here, and we have, a lot of buying in the cumulative delta. And what's the result? So we came down this whole move. we spent a lot more buying and we achieved like half the result compared to this whole move, starting with the first floor here and the last floor. This achieved half the result. We wasted a lot more buying here and a lot more buying here. So this is an effort, no result situation. Okay. And these are things that, you know, anybody should be able to identify. These are not subtleties. These are the obvious. I'm just pointing out what's obvious. And so we got this reversal, lower ceiling, and guess what? We begin to get these floors again. And we're accompanied with selling and bid control dots. So that's good. And the cumulative delta, we see expansion of selling, and we're getting hit selling here again, and boom, we're going down. And we got the bid control dots. So we got a, you know, continuation of the trend here, and there's a lot of entry points. Get entries on the bid control dots after the floor, and we test it. Right here, we're testing the floor again. We're getting the bid control dots. Those are also valid entries, right? And we get to this floor, and we see that this floor begins to fail to price. You know, it begins to hold price, and you can see that it's bouncing between these two floors. Sort of how it happened here. I didn't talk about it. It bounced between these two floors and start to break out of the floor, which led to this ceiling. Right here, it's similar. It's bouncing between these two floors, and it breaks out of the floor, generates a new ceiling, right? So, you know, you would want to take your profit where you can. I'm not going to go extensively into the exit strategies because I've talked about that a lot. Here, more to talk about the market structure. So we made lower lows, and guess what? Look at this. We got ceiling lines here. And what do we get here? Again, compression. Okay, we're getting compression of the ceiling lines, shortening of the thrust. Okay, so it's not a sign of strength. And after that, we get the bid control. The selling is beginning to expand once again. And here. All right. So, you know, when these ceiling lines here begin to form, you would think, well, is it time to consider a long position? Remember, we're still in a downtrend, right? We have lower lows here, lower lows here. This was a lower high and a lower ceiling, right? And we didn't get, I wouldn't say, significant looking buying here. And at the compression of these ceiling lines, you know, that looks like a failure, which means there's a lot of volume. These two ceiling lines, there's a lot of volume at this price area, which is within like 2 points, and price is unable to push up. So it's also an effort, no result. And then we enter this, downtrend here. And, you know, when we begin getting these floor lines here, they're beginning to look compressed, not as compressed as this, but still compressed. I probably would exit the trade. It's just, you know, too close for comfort. We're getting a lot of, you know, there's a lot of volume, and price begins to sort of, you know, jump up and down. You know, so if you look at the overall selling, you know, it is beginning to be less. So, you know, if you didn't get out by here, I would probably have gotten out, you know, around here at this point. But, you know, you could get out where you want to. It's just you're getting a lot of these floor lines, which means that there's just a lot of activity and price is sort of undecided. Okay, so that's it for this webinar. I wanted to go over MAutoFloorCeiling, how it defines market structure. I took off the waves and the algorithms so that we can focus on the price movement, and I think that this should be very informative. I've talked about MAutoFloorCeiling before, but I don't think I have presented it and how it defines market structure. It's a very powerful indicator. And hope you guys enjoyed this video then, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.